con, con, construction on camps, and also on retail as well, and also the uh, companies who help to serve the retail um, uh, 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 companies. So we've went through our projections from April, and we've done some updates to give a council the most current info that we could um, today. So to attached to the memo that was sent to a council, you'll see a table A. A, a table A has, gives an gives an gives an update with a, a data that is current through the end of April. Um, and it also takes into account uh, payroll of the payroll of the payroll of the payroll of period of uh, through May the 3rd. Um, and in going through in going through the 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 the, the income and expense accounts, um, the projections uh, have changed a bit. Um, the the um, the the projected income loss by the end of June increased to a 5.9 million in a total. But each department also went through in detail each of their each of their supplies and contracts accounts to determine what are the expenses and costs that they would that that are crucial before the end of June. So in in going through each account, we were able to identify about 1.7 million dollars in costs that we are able to save in the current year. And so it reduces the net impact on the general fund downwards. But what caused changes? So again, our income accounts did go down a bit, but there are some accounts that increased, and there are also some accounts that decreased. Our 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 property taxes, they've they've increased. A, a TOT based upon returns March decreased. We've 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 opened up our building permits, uh, our building permits again, in the first part of May. So we pro- we project that our building permit income will also increase a bit. Um, then we also expect that we will be able to hold some uh, uh, some degree of rec uh, 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 camps towards mid to the end of June. So our fees our fees for a rec uh, camps and programs, they also are our projections also did increase a bit. We've not yet updated our our uh, our our sales tax, our sales tax projections, um, because we still don't have enough uh, data to update what we told council in the end of April. Um, the data in regards uh, to us to us out Act is a typically a couple of months of behind. So we won't know for sure about a Q1 until the end um, 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 May. And we also won't get uh, uh, details on a Q1 until July. We won't know for sure about a Q2 until the end of August, and we won't get a detailed info until the end of until uh, uh, October. So on when a new data comes in, we will continue to update the uh, projections and keep a, a council up uh, to date. And then again, in in terms of our costs, each uh, 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 department went through um, went through every single supply and every single contracts account to again uh, 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 determine are there any costs that we could uh, defer? Are there any costs that we could cut out in the current year? You know, what are the expenses that are crucial, so that we are able to still continue to run through the end of June. So we did I we did identify a big amount. We are uh, uh, taking a cost con, con, containment steps in the uh, 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 in the current year. But we've also put into a place a new a, a COVID um, a new COVID uh, a program so that we are able to uh, track um, any 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 and all uh, uh, COVID costs. They could be for a personnel cost. They could be for OT cost to purchase a PPE, or also to purchase uh, purchase PCs so that people who are able to, dependent upon each person's a job, that they're able to also telework, um, so that we can continue to keep our own people healthy and uh, safe, but also so that they are able to still stay productive productive as well. Um, and we hope that we'll be able to get aid either from the state or from the feds in the future as well. So we will continue to track each and every expense that could have anything to do with COVID. We may not be able to recover all costs, but we will attempt to recover anything that we can. And I'm I am hopeful that we'll be able to recoup, some of our costs. There, 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 there is a chance that we won't recoup all, but I again am uh, uh, I again am hopeful. And there is a bill there is a bill right now in a, a, a Congress that 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 could help out public uh, all public agencies, and I hope that it will be able to help Campbell as well. It's still up for a, a, a debate. I expect that it will change a, a, a lot, but it could be helpful. So in conclusion, we still project about uh, a $4 million deficit in 1920, and anytime that our 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 income is less than expenses come the end of each June, we either need to fill we either need to fill the we either need to fill the the cap, whether our own our own reserve accounts, or to go to the go to the outside as well. In a total, we've got about a we've got about a 16 million in reserves that we could draw down upon um, over the uh, uh, over the past a couple of a couple of couple of couple of hires when times were uh, when times were good, we were able to build our reserves upwards, just over the past uh, uh, 2 years. We've built up the econ or the econ reserve up by a 3.2 million in a total, and a reserve account's only purpose is to uh, help when times are tough, and and to help to and to help to smooth out your uh, 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 cost and your income, so that you don't see a so that you don't see a so that you don't see a big jumps up and down, and 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 so that you are 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 able to uh, decrease what you may need to cut, so that you are able to continue uh, uh, to serve public. But in the up uh, in the upcoming in the upcoming proposed budget, we are also putting together a different different options to show the council what a 5 and a 10 and a 15% cut a, 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 could be, um, and to give the council a different 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 uh, different options. But in the current in the current 1920, I do and I do and anticipate that we will need to draw upon our reserve accounts. I won't know the total amount until we get the total amount 100%, until we get to the end of August. Um, uh, 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 but I am able to I am able to tell the council a initial updated projection today. And we don't recommend a an external allowance yet, because we really don't got a cash flow problem. It's really an income problem, and one that over a time, over the next 1 to 2 and out of schools, that it will also recover as well. But if we do see a, a cash flow problem in the future, then we will return to a council, and we will continue to explore external loans, to fill any of our cash flow, our cash flow needs at a time. So in terms of the next steps, we will do a budget introduction on June the 9th. I will also take to a, a, a council the adoption of the 2012 the 2012 21 of phase as well. But I will also oppose that we not do an increase, but instead, that we come back in in no in no in no no November, to see where we are at the time, and if the council would if the council would want to do an increase in in no 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 November. But I mean, I also in June, I will give a council two extra options also, to either do a CPI adjustment, that would go into effect in July, or also some adjustment that could be in between a CPI adjustment and also a no adjustment. And I will show a council the different impacts of each of those. And then on June the 25th, taking into account any of the input, either from the council or also from the public, that we've heard on June the 9th, we will also go for the budget adoption as well. So that ends the the update, and I will now take I will now take any uh, 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 any questions, and I will turn off a screen as well. Okay, Rich. Let's see. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Somebody muted me. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to another council member about this last night. This seems, I don't know, just talking about the agenda, which I think is important because I'm hearing a lot of people with concerns over that. So you're saying staff's going to come up with like 3 scenarios about, if things go better than we think, if things go like we think, or things go much worse than we think. And then somehow before that, we're going to have a CIP discussion and we're going to have a budget discussion. It seems like we need to have this scenario discussion. I mean, that's part of a main part of the council. I'm always saying we're in too much detail, but certainly, and this may be one for Brian, we need to start talking about, priorities within the different things, not at the detail level, but, do we think this is more important than that from a high level? So you guys know if and when we need to cut something, we do. I mean, we're not the most optimistic, thing where everybody's going to go back to the scenario you're talking about is after we get a vaccine. And that's the most optimistic is going to be the second half of next fiscal year. So we're going to have a lot of hurting. I think everyone in the council thinks that. So it seems like we first need to talk about priorities should things go to these various scenarios. Let's say 3 scenarios, good, okay, and go bad. It seems like that's what other cities have been doing. So I don't it seems like we got to talk about that first and not just immediately sit down with everybody's work plan and go department by department. I don't want to go department by department. That's my opinion. I'd be interested to hear others. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Something's wrong. Cecil, are you doing weird
So-
with the muting?
So the system muted everyone. Cecil's unmuting you now. Hold on.
Okay, and my voice is back, but my video's still locked out. Okay, I hung up. So do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was completely locked out there. So, and I heard only half of what Rich said. I think I got the gist of it though. Okay, he's working on my video. So I think Liz, you were raising your hand.
Yes. So I would like to tag along with what Councilmember Waterman said, a little bit differently, but very much along the same lines. My expectation of this meeting was somewhat different. I think that, to be succinct, I was expecting that staff would come back with what they thought. I thought council gave very clear to the last meeting that we didn't want to use the surplus and that we wanted staff to come back with their definition of essential services so that we could respond to those essential services and then put in our priorities and concerns. I think we were trying to let staff take the lead and not get caught up in the detail, which I agree with Councilmember Waterman. We don't want to do at this point. I know I certainly in February had a different expectation of what priority setting was. And after the April meeting, I sent some notes to staff about all of this and what I thought some of the key issues and responsibilities and decision points that the council would need to make. And I revised them last night based on what we've learned between April 21st and now. I think that, I just think that we need to have a discussion of what the core essential services of the city are so that the council can stay at the high level and figure out what we need to do.
Okay, Paul, do you have any questions? You're on mute, Paul. Brian, can you hear me? You're on mute also there.
Yes, I can hear you. See, the channel somehow muted everyone. Cecil's going through to unmute everyone. Just bear with us a second.
Okay.
Muted.
Is it unmuted now?
No, now I can hear you, Paul.
Yeah, I kept getting a message saying I can't unmute, the host muted me.
Right, I was getting that too. And
So
now
ju-
my video is still turned off.
So just briefly, I would agree and just say, Brian, if you look at the input I gave you on that survey, it really focuses on what are the priorities I see, and that's what we have to accomplish. And beyond that, there are daily tasks and other work plan tasks we do. But if we accomplish, in my case, these 3 or 4 things, that's what we should focus on. So that we're doing it that way, kind of, my comment in there, if it made sense, was I'm not saying all these things I said are no priority, aren't relevant or aren't important. They're relatively unimportant if you don't do these 3 things. But when you do these 3 things, then staff can go ahead and do the others. We don't need to know the daily tasks. So I would agree with trying to come up with a priority we'll call directions or objectives or something that say this is what is important for the next year. That's kind of how I thought it should go.
Okay, Anne?
Well, I concur with the other council members. I look at it as two that there should be the council priorities, which are the policy decisions, the overall goal we're trying to achieve, and the work plan items that were sent to the council in the survey, to me, are not policy. They're staff driven. They're operational to keep the engines running, to get from day to day. And it's really up to the staff to be determining what it is that their priority is, and coming to the council and saying that this function is a mandated function, it's an essential function, or it's discretionary, and advising us to, if there's a fiscal impact to it, can we save money by doing something? And I'm looking for direction from the staff. I don't feel that that's a council decision to be determining what the staff work plans are.
Okay,
And I think we as a council need to determine what our overall priorities are and then move on. And I also feel that we need to be, the council direction from the last study session was that we wanted to use a minimal amount of reserves to get through this, that we need to look at our model and I mean, it's a different day, and our service delivery is different, and staff should be looking at all opportunities to improve functions, reduce where we need to reduce. We may not be able to provide daily service, calendar service from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, based on what happened with COVID, and our obviously our recreation programs are going to be affected because we can't have large gatherings at the theater or group sports teams. So the staff needs to be looking at all of those scenarios.
okay, and I think I saw Liz. Did you have more comment, or Paul? I see Paul also. Liz first, but you're on mute. Liz can't, Brian, we're
Now
back
it-
to,
Now I can.
there we go.
Okay. I just would offer, I think staff did an appropriate job back in April on the 21st, telling us that we were going to be 4 million in the hole, give or take. And nothing much has changed from that. What I'm looking for is what is staff's expectation going forward? Councilmember Waterman just said something that is similar to mine. I do not think we're going to come out with this until some point in 2021. So staff seems to be running on a different plane. I think we need to establish what staff expectation and planning horizon is so that council can agree or not. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I keep getting notes, sorry.
my video is still off, but I heard most of what you said. There was a little
Alright.
cutting out.
Yeah, the note keeps showing up. So I'm just saying, I think it will be helpful to kind of understand, staff presented what the problem is this fiscal year. Be that as it may, we haven't gotten there resolved, but what are they thinking for next year? How are we, and I'm not saying what's to be cut, but are we expecting revenues to continue down in the same plane? And there's something in the report about that. So that council can agree that, it's not going to come back in September. That kind of a conversation. I think that would be a helpful level to start from.
Okay, I saw Paul waving his hand, but Brian just waved his hand. Brian, did you want to talk before Paul or wait?
I can wait till Paul and I can address all the comments at that time.
Okay, Paul?
Okay, just briefly, I mean, I'll second what Councilmember Bivey said, which is part of this discussion is probably things we can't do. There are going to be some services that we would like to do. They either may not be relevant because those functions don't exist for a year, as she said, or that are very important to people. We do the surveys, street maintenance is one, but it may be that we can't maintain it to the level we did before. That doesn't mean it's not important, but I think we should set the priorities of what is more important. And then in this case of Public Works, can get what he can done with the understanding that it's a secondary priority. So I agree with what she said, that I'm wondering too, what services are not available to us anymore because of restrictions on being out and about. And then what other ones does council feel just should take a second place behind some of the other more important ones?
Okay, Brian, you were waving your hand also?
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments of the council and I wholeheartedly agree as to the direction of the council and process. And that's the direction that staff is taking and working on to look at service levels and our service model. And we're working on, as Will showed in his PowerPoint presentation, the teams are working on 3 different scenarios at 5, 10, and 15%. And to be able to articulate that when we come back June 9th, that is certainly what's intended. What we're hoping today is to get feedback from council on priorities and really strategically where the council wants to go as we refine those. We'll certainly want to take that into account. And that was really the intent of today, is to continue to take steps down that path and ensure that we're consistent. With regard to projections and and the question about where we see this economy over time, I can assure you that we're not looking at this in a vacuum. One of the things I've been working on with the finance department and finance director is a projection tool. We didn't have it ready for today, but we will be showing you tools that will project out where we see both revenues and expenditures at all levels. I think it goes out 10 years, Will.
He's on, oh, there he goes.
I thought it's out to 8 years.
Okay.
Thank you. So we will be providing that to the council. It's just a matter of crushing for information and the time to put that together in a meaningful format. We're not there today, and that was part of the reason I mentioned in the chicken or the egg at the beginning of this discussion. It's hard, I understand, for council to provide some definitive direction without kind of seeing that piece of it too. So what I was hoping to do today, once we get through the budget presentation, was to talk high level about our priorities for the year and make sure that we're all on the same page on those. I didn't intend to have a item by item discussion on the work plans that was provided to the council, just so the council and the public can be aware of the level of things that we're working on. And there's questions about what we're doing and what we're working on. But I'd rather focus, as the council is suggesting, on the high level strategies and projections for next year.
Okay, so I didn't get to make any comments. I think Councilmember Bybee said it very succinctly. The three things: the council priorities, the work plans of staff and operations, getting the information about their 5, 10, 15% cuts. And then the fact that we had directed them to use the minimum reserves. I didn't see anything in here that talked about what could be cut to then get closer to using the minimum amount of reserves. So we're saying that this is it. This is our expenditures. We can't make up for any of this, Brian, Will?
We're kind of combining 2 fiscal years here. So the presentation today was on current fiscal years. The scenarios that we're running are really for next year's budget. We are continuing to look at ways to cut this. This is purely for the council. It's a month since we gave you your last update, actually, and things have changed by about $1 million with what was projected before. So it isn't the same.
I understand that, but we're still taking 4 million out of reserve.
For this current fiscal year, that is correct. That's what we're currently projecting, is running a deficit of 4 million. Now, we don't know what that number is going to be at the end of the fiscal year. We'll keep reporting to the council, and we'll keep making efforts to look at ways in services and contracts. But right now, with the where we are in the fiscal year, that's our most up-to-date and accurate projection.
And there's nothing that we can do to lower that, to not take out as much reserve.
Well, these are projections. So, there's things that we can continue to do to look at reducing contracts and services. We've done that exercise with staff for a large part, but those are factored into a projection. So as things become more solid and not a projection, they become actuals, that number could change.
By how much? Like, are we going to go down 1 million or 2 million?
I think that might be overly optimistic, but Will, do you want to touch base on that?
In terms of any additional costs that we could increase, the thing that the council needs to understand is that we've got 2 months. Okay. Also, 50% of our costs are payroll costs. Unless we shut down everything, almost everything, except for a lease. Our current cost projection is what we expect. It could go up. It could go down. We are attempting to control every single cost that we can, but 50% of our costs are payroll costs. We've let a, a, attempts ago. We aren't paying for part timers. The only costs are still our full time, but those costs are also not that easy to just turn off either. It takes a time, and the sole a purpose of a reserve account is to help and to ensure that you don't need to make harsh and quick cuts un, 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 until you know for sure how things will uh, 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 turn out. And if we, I mean, I understand the council's concern, and we will, and we are taking every step that we can to ensure that we don't need to touch the reserve accounts. But if you don't ever touch them, then why put them in place? So I don't mean to be a blunt and stuff here, but 50% of our costs are payroll costs that are not easy to just turn off. So we will do everything that we can to help, but it needs to be understood that a good portion of our costs are payroll costs that are not easy to stop as well.
Okay. So I'm having a lot of problems. Everybody keeps cutting out. I can't get my video on. I want to log off to the meeting here for a minute and try to come back in and see if it'll help. So if we can take a few seconds here to allow me to start over. Hold on.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I've been pretty much locked out of this meeting the whole time. I'm here, but
Talk.
just want you to be aware.
Here we go.
I
I
just got my
still have
audio,
my
but-
video still off,
Okay.
but can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can hear you.
Paul?
Susan, you've clicked the stop and start video on the bottom of your screen.
There's nothing on the bottom of my screen.
If you hover either at the top or the bottom, there is a button that says stop video, start video.
Yeah, I know.
Try
And from-
toggling that.
Hey, from my side, it looks like everybody has full control, so I'm not sure what's going on with the video for some folks.
Yeah, my video now won't let me come back on.
Yeah, I don't have video either.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
I've got a message that says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
That's
And-
what I'm getting also.
Okay, one second. Let me take a look.
And apparently some of the transmission to the public isn't working.
Yeah, we're looking into that as well.
Do we need to take a couple minute break, Cecil, to get you to work on it?
And then,
Yeah, if you could.
and then maybe I'll log back in.
No, I would just stay in for now. Let me take a look at this first.
Okay, so why don't we take a 5-minute break to let Cecil figure this out? Okay, but no, we're not to log out, right? Cecil?
Yeah, go ahead and stay in. Yeah, go ahead and stay in for sure.
Okay,
Ah,
all right, 5-minute break.
I'm back.
There you go. All right, Paul. So Paul, looked like I was on your side.
They're starting to come. What are you doing, Cecil?
My screen has been doing all kinds of things.
No, I'm not doing anything. So what I see, by the way, is everyone has full permission to turn off video and or sound. Although some of you are experiencing, it may be internet traffic related. Sometimes they'll degrade video first and sound second.
Tell them when they want to turn off video.
Well, and also too, Cecil, under participants,
Yeah.
it says Mayor Landry, mic on, video off, and then under Cecil, City Manager and Finance, they all have it being recorded, but no one else has that little thing of record.
Oh, that's okay. That just means that you're recording the meeting. That's a little bit different.
Okay,
If I
so
turn my mic off, I may not be able to turn it back on. That's what I'm worried about.
yeah,
Just stay where you are. Don't touch anything.
okay, so we're still taking a 5-minute break though, right, Cecil, to help you?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just want to make sure the permissions are correct.
Okay, I'm gonna go on mute now. My video is still off.
Okay, I'm
Susan, you're back visually. You're on mute.
Okay, now how we doing?
We got you.
Okay,
Council, can we try
look.
and hear you?
so let's go through, I'm gonna go through people and let's see if we can hear you. Liz?
Yes, I'm here. I'm leaving it on. I'm not turning it off.
Okay,
Yeah.
Paul,
All right. Looks like I
Paul?
see most people are on, so I'm not gonna touch anything.
okay, so I hear Paul Resnikoff, say hi.
Yeah, I'm on. I don't think I can mute and then unmute again, but I'm on.
Okay, so Rich, I show you're on mute. Rich can't hear anything or Rich can't see anything.
Once you mute, you lose control again.
Okay,
So
Rich is, there we go. Rich
Now
is,
I'm okay.
What I just did is I unmuted everybody. I'm not gonna touch anything. So you can unmute, of course, yourselves and remute, but I would not do that. There's something to be unstable. about
Okay,
this.
so Paul Camoyen, say hi.
Hi.
Paul, Bill,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and let's see, there's Will,
Aye.
Carrie.
Hello.
Miriam,
Lawrence,
she can't hear us. Andrea,
Aye.
okay, Jill. She's not here.
You can't unmute. Oh, now there she is.
Okay, I'm good.
Todd,
Yes, hello.
hi,
Todd.
Norita,
Hello.
Norit.
Norette, I'm sorry, I can't read here, it's so small. Gary, did I say hi to Gary? Okay, it looks like everybody's on, but now we're all on mute, so be careful what you say. Paul Camoyen?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to report an observation, and maybe this may help provide some positive hope in the future. Unlike the last recession that we had back in 07, 08, we in community development saw a sharp decline in applications. We are not seeing that now. We are not, just so you know. Today, we took in about $100,000 in a plan check
Oh, great.
for the Trojan storage. I've reached out to every big project we have, Cressley Homes, Robeson. They're all lining up. They can't wait to submit. So I just want to let you know on the development side, it still seems pretty healthy, and there still seems to be funding necessary to realize these projects. So that should be a sign of good news. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Great. Paul Resnikoff's raising his hand.
Thank you. So I just want to make a comment. So first of all, Will, thank you for your bluntness. I appreciate it, actually. So let me thank you also for the report. I think the report's a good update, and it's good to see we're $1 million almost off where we were before. I appreciate the update and the fact, I guess, that as much as I also want to use as few reserves, we're limited in what we can do for this fiscal year. So I'm accepting what you're saying, that, you know, that's what that's there for. We have to do it in the short term. What it means to me is that when we look at the next fiscal year, then things, so if we have to continue, we can't take the reserves down to zero. I would hope not, because we don't know how long the recovery will be. So what I'm going to look for in the next fiscal year budget is what Councilmember Bybee talked about earlier. That's where the service level cuts, I would think would be, of we can't do this anymore. Hey, Public Works, what can you cut out over here? And that's for staff to figure out. So I'm appreciative. I think I trust your judgment. I think you understand this more than we do. It makes sense, but I think we have to be aware that limits us moving in the future to really looking at let's say starting with non-personnel or payroll related cost reductions, which are service level reductions, and payroll savings if we have to. But I accept what you said, and actually it's refreshing to hear bluntly. So thank you.
Okay, did Ann or Rich, Liz?
Well, the others would have.
Ann's on mute. Rich, did you have something?
No, I just don't want to mute it because then you told me.
Yeah, Ann's still on mute.
Okay.
Doesn't look like she's shaking her head of wanting to talk, so Liz.
So I don't disagree with what Councilmember Resnikoff said. We have a little bit of an elephant in the room, but I think that that's why I asked about what we're planning in the long run for the next year's budget. I think we really have to understand that. And as to Community Development Director comments, one of the, I'm going to say, observations I've had, I don't consider it a priority, but it's more of an observation. We do have programs such as permitting and building that are self-funding, and that's great. We also have some programs in Park and Rec that have been self-funding, but depending on the number of students, that dynamic may be changing. But we have funds that fund city services from sales tax and TOT. We need to understand the reduction in those revenues are going to impact us going forward. And I think it's important to have, I'm going to suggest one policy kind of thing that council at is something like services that are necessary to meet community needs, existing commitments, self-funded, are a reasonable thing for staff to come back and is what we're doing. We have to look at is how we fund other essential services that come with funding from sales tax and TOT and other sources.
Okay, you cut out a little bit, but from what I got of that is that you wanted to make a policy that to identify services that we have to meet the needs and are self-funded, and then also what other services are not self-funded.
I don't know if policy is the right word, but I think it's important to understand that per the example that the community development just gave, is that there are some services the city can provide because they are self-funded.
Right.
And
But the other part of it that you said was that the ones that are not self-funded.
the ones that the general fund backfills the costs on and based on sales tax and TOT, yeah.
Okay, so what, if Brian, let's make sure I got this right, but my understanding is staff has or will prepare these 5, 10, and 15% proposed cuts to the different services and programs. And when will we get that?
Coming to you on June 9th. You'll get that in advance of that meeting.
June 9th. You cut out a little, June 9th.
I'm sorry,
right?
June 9th is a scheduled date for those discussions. You'll get the material in advance of that meeting.
More in advance than what we got now?
Yes, that's our hope. I think, Will, were we saying June 4th distribution for that material?
Okay, so 5 days ahead of time. Okay, so Rich?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what the vice mayor said. So I was at a meeting the other day with County Supervisor Wasserman, and he said they're expecting a big reduction in property tax evaluation. I guess Larry Stone and those guys, and that's what they did 10 years ago, have the ability to go out and lower by whatever percentage. It isn't fixed at 2% or 4%. So they are expecting, there's a big deal. This is for the library, and the library depends almost 100% on property tax. So there will be some hit to property tax almost for sure. I don't know the amount.
Okay, I hadn't heard from Ann in a while. Ann, do you have any comments?
No, I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, so I guess now I want to know how we continue to proceed this morning. We were originally going to take a break at 12:30 and then do the county call at 1. So the part of our discussion today was about priorities. Did we get that Survey Monkey? Did everybody fill it out? And do we need that today? Liz did not fill it out. Rich shaking his head. Ann shaking her head.
So if I may, Madam Mayor, it wasn't complete. It was an attempt to maybe use technology, but I don't know that it would be useful today without everyone having a chance to provide some input in that. I think some of the comments I've heard is trying to focus back on the higher level versus down at the granular level. That was really there to try to help stimulate thought process on the types of things we're working on. But the goal would be to really set our priorities for the year, which we've included last year's priorities in the packet. There's really 5 of them from last year. And perhaps, at the appropriate time, it'd be good to start focusing on those and see the council's interest to moving forward on those priorities, or adding or deleting priorities from that list. And if we get to that today, I think we've got enough input then to start refining those work plan items for your June 9th discussion.
Okay, so hang on real quick, Liz. Let me ask a general question to the council. Do we want any more discussion right now about the budget shortfall that we have this fiscal year? Yes, no, we do not need any more, right? We're all good on the budget, right?
Yes.
Okay, Liz, you were going to ask a question.
Now I lost my train of thought from what Brian was just saying.
Well then, oh,
I'm dear council member Bybee is getting a great comments for being focused on her earlier thoughts. I was trying to say earlier that the world is different now, and our sense of what priorities are now are different. I mean, one of my priorities used to be, and we had our bin list and we had our parking list and all the things that we wanted. Things like getting a parking management system in the downtown and all of that. All of that kind of priority has all gone away. I mean, it's just not where our minds are. To me, this is where I was hoping to have more information from staff on what they considered essential services, because I wanted to see, and again, to me, this is more teamwork than priorities. Wanted to see finance have a plan of how they're going to attack, how we're going to attack reopening all the city facilities and how much that's going to cost over and above what we used to think. How much we have in the way of where else can we save? I have some suggestions. There's some state money that the governor announced this week. There's other sources of money. So I was hoping that the finance department would come forward, not so much with budget stuff, but new ways of thinking, new ideas, new pieces of information. I do have some very important thoughts, which will surprise no one, on housing. I really feel the council needs a lot of information to make that important, understand the importance of that for the future. And then I have some governance comments.
okay. So let's do this, Brian. If this works, and are you trying? No, you look like you were trying to speak.
Go ahead, Susan, and I'll.
Okay, so
make your point.
I'm sorry, Ann, everybody's cutting in and out. Say that again, Ann, please.
Just complete your thought, and then I have a comment to make.
Okay, well, my thought was, yes, we're missing this information that you're asking for. More than one of us is asking for. My understanding, Brian, is that we're going to be getting this information on June 5th, right? The percentage reductions, what's essential, what services they would propose to cut. So we are not having that today. But what we could potentially do now is look at the things that we had last year of the 5, there were 3 categories, 5 priorities. If we want to continue with those, and then what do we want to add at probably at a minimal level? And then at that, they're not final, and then we wait till June 5th and June 9th to finalize the priorities for next year. Or Ann first.
So for me, I have 3 top priorities, and they really continue from this year to next year. And it's Measure O, it's JDM parking, and the general plan update. I think that needs to be done. I think those are 3 major categories of items that need to be completed. And of importance, but a lesser importance would be obviously to continue to track legislative updates and things that affect the city in the areas of local control and budget control. And Also, building maintenance issues, particularly at the community center. I think we need to be focusing on that. Not only at the community center, but overall in our public infrastructure, because the longer you delay repairs and upgrades to city facilities, the larger the cost gets to that I would want to focus on.
Okay, Rich, I think you were next. Rich, we can't hear you. Your mic's off. There you go.
Sorry, I do that. There's a lot of background noise here, and that's happening with other people, but I think mine's probably as bad. So it's hard when I can't mute. Maybe that's another way to do it. But so I agree with Ann. Something we talked about in past years, and it's also true, is somehow we have to separate. So some of the lists of, we're talking about Measure O, you know, obviously a high priority means keeping the economy going, you know, trying to survive this. You know, the last downturn 10 years ago, quite a few cities didn't survive. They went bankrupt. So keeping viability, and then later starting to promote business. But we have to separate, because Ann, you were also making other lists, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit. There's what you were calling the engine. I think I've said keep the trains running on time. There are day-to-day things, and as we each list things, it doesn't mean maintenance of parks or maintenance of the community center, or, as a good example, the police are critically important. Obviously, they're critically important. I think those are the engine of the city, to quote what Ann said. I think we have to separate that out. The engine, the day-to-day running of the city, be a priority. We could go through that and look at department by department, police versus community development versus, you know, the public works, keeping the roads going, and saying what that's important. But I think we have to sort of have a general view. If we're going to talk about maintenance, we should talk about maintenance. I don't know if we need to get into this maintenance versus that maintenance. So I'm hoping we're not going to dive into the discussion of day-to-day city operations. We, like I said, if Ryan's going to give us a list, it would be more, look, if we're going to cut, these are where the cuts are. Again, hopefully high level within different areas, and do that. That's different to me than council priorities, which should be longer term. Measure O is a longer term project. General plan's longer term. Fiscal viability is always a longer term goal. The only specific I had was businesses to turn them around as quick as possible is more of a short-term goal. But somehow we have to separate. I think this is where we get tied up every year. You know, the issue of you know, Ann, you were talking about, for example, the legislative, but that's kind of, we have a lot of ongoing tasks that council members do, staff do. So you have legislative, I have SAVACA, I have library JP. Those are ongoing tasks. Again, they're important within their own right, but to me, that's kind of a separate, they're usually not budget hogs and things. So somehow, and this is where we sort of get in circle, it seems like every year, is trying to separate out these different categories of things. So I'd rather, at least today, keep high level policy oriented things that are going to bring us forward. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, did you have comments?
Yeah, similar to what's been said, I think like Vice Mayor said, certain things that were very important to us just aren't important anymore in the new world. I agree with Councilmember Bybee that, for example, building repair, and we always talk street maintenance. If you don't do it now, repairs later are more expensive than tree maintenance. That being said, I'm still willing to delay those if, in fact, the street maintenance stops Public Works from somehow getting Measure O done. Then we just have to pay more later. And some of it's also going to be cash flow. I think, Will, you made a comment about sales tax, and we're evaluating that. But as I understand it, businesses can pay late. If they can pay late and move out the payments, we may get 100% of our sales tax. If we don't get it for a year, doesn't matter. It's a cash flow issue. So I'm willing to look at things like building maintenance and street repair that are critical and say, yeah, they're critical, but if they're 12 months out and cost us more, that just may be life in the new era. So I think the keys to me are keeping the city going. That's on, senior staff, mostly Brian and Will, of keeping this city going fiscally sound and coming back as quickly as possible. A subset of that is working with the businesses, not just downtown, but throughout the city, to get them self-sustaining, to get them hiring people so that they generate sales tax, and that helps us come back. So that's kind of tied. I think Measure O is an obligation we have to do, and we can't lose the ability to get that funding and all that. So that to me moves forward. And it's funny, the one thing that that I elevate in this times, especially if we're going to have pandemic issues for 3 months, 6 months, a year, we don't know, right? Is what became very important to people from the contact me I've seen online is open space. The more people had to stay in, the ability to get outside, they were so upset when the track closed. They were upset that there were too many people invading their space on the creek trail. To me, all of a sudden, especially if people are sheltered, and we may be doing this again in the winter, who knows? And even when people get out, that became a very, very important thing. I think if we were doing a survey now, it elevates that up higher, that escape. And the more we have of that, and that could be a trail, that could be whatever, the more we have of that and give people that opportunity, I think it's important for mental health too. So I would say economy, city, economy, business, part of that, Measure O. And I'm actually saying I want to put focus on some open space and have that available for people to get out of their houses or when they're out. That's somewhat of getting back to normalcy. And I think it's important. And I think there's a lot of things like building maintenance and street maintenance that we have to do that I can delay on. And then lastly, Councilmember Waterman said it, one of the items on the Survey Monkey was public works supporting like the JPA, solid waste JPA. Those are things that are going to be done because we're part of the JPA. We don't need to worry about that. They know what they need to do, and those tasks at that level, I think just should happen.
Okay. And Liz?
So I think this has been a very good discussion. A lot of consistency, different perspectives, but lots of consistency. I would just like to clarify a definition when we talk legislative. When we think these high priorities, I might use a different word like economic stability, which is very much what Councilmember Resnikoff was just saying. The one that I think is very important because it's outside of our control and it is going to influence us for the long term. And that is legislation, and that is land use and housing. And I think Councilmember Waterman and I've spoken quite a bit about the fact that there's a lot happening in our community, not unlike what the Community Development Director just said. There's a lot of places where we have discussed the need for specific plans. So I think that we cannot lose sight. We need to be in there, we need to help our community, and we need to be safe. But we also have to be aware of what's going to come down and alter us. And we have to, a lot or a little, whatever the council wants, to recognize that. And I am hoping that staff will follow up and have a meeting with the mayor and I that we've requested to talk about housing and the Plan 2050 and the RENA and things, because it difference on how staff spend their in the future and the decisions that the council will make. And then one final comment is the governor said yesterday about some money he was going to give to individual cities. And I don't know where that stands.
Okay. So I appreciate everything that everybody just talked about. So if I look at this spread, this little part thing that had our priorities from last year, you guys all have that. It's in the agenda package. It talks strategic objectives, council adopted priorities, and then comments by council. So based on what I just heard, everybody has Measure O on their list, which is to me still ongoing. It's a priority but it seems like the engine is moving forward, and we've now got the architects on board. I agree with Councilmember Resnikoff about our open space. And one of the things that I put on the Survey Monkey about that was, we are not getting any new land. We are getting people paying in lieu of fees, and we're banking money. And that was one of my things under open spaces. How do we get more land? Everybody wants to go outside right now, and it is elevated in people's importance, but we're not buying land. We aren't even making a little developer who's putting in 30 houses, put in a park all the time. I know a couple lately, they've added a park, which is private or public, but maintained by them, which is good. But a lot of others are paying in lieu, like the Cressley home had no money towards buying land or setting aside land on their parcel. So I made that under open space, under council comments, instead of just parks, playground, trails. It's, getting more land. The community participation, I felt, didn't include one of the topics that we talked about. Is it's not just keeping the community informed about state legislation and the housing. It's also about being more transparent and letting them know everything that we're doing under community participation, and trying to engage them more in the process. The housing legislation and the other legislation, it seemed to have come up mostly. Liz brought it up. I think it is important. Rich and Rich, Paul, and Liz talked about economic stability and fiscal viability, which I think right now is one of the highest priorities. Make sure the city doesn't go bankrupt. Make sure we don't keep using more of our reserves, and that we need to be more sustainable. We also want to keep the businesses going and looking at the economy. Our revenue is dependent on the success of the businesses. So that to me would be a good thing to add. The last one is the general plan update. There was Ann and Liz and I, or I didn't bring it up, but I want that one to be on the list. But my concern right now is, from my understanding, is the general plan is in an administrative draft right now. And we never had the preferred alternative that was from the GPAC. We never had that come back to us to approve it. There are some issues with the environmental review of who is paying for the EIR, or the environmental document. It's not going to be a full-blown EIR, but who's paying for that? Who's managing it? The last I heard is it's through the existing consultant, which to me is not acceptable. So to me, the general plan needs to have some, review of where we're at. There's no housing element in it. A lot of these new legislations may not be in there. The council doesn't have access to the administrative draft, but it seems like it jumped the gun. And so I do think that needs to stay on our priorities. So based on everything that I heard, the list doesn't change a whole lot of what's existing. And the two things specifically to add is about fiscal stability and keeping the economy going. Secondary to this main priority list to me is this whole life cycle costs of buildings and streets maintenance things. What I mean by life cycle cost is there's part of the roof at the community center that's falling off above people's heads. It's a ceiling that's falling off. Where is that on the list of what is priority? And to me, I can put all of that into one category of our life cycle costs. What are we projecting? When's the roof going to be needed? The whole roof fixed at the community center. If we're going to maintain our parks and look at open space, we already had the playground inventory of things that need to be replaced. And I don't want to lose that because that goes to long-term costs. That goes to the 5-year plan. of where do we need to be projecting this, or are we going to have such a shortfall that these maintenance things are going to just keep falling by the wayside, which to me is not good, because then they're going to cost more later if more of the roof falls off at the community center. So I guess in summary, this list that we have, I don't see anything coming off this list. We had two things about economy and fiscal stability. Does anybody else see anything on this master list? Rich?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would, geez, I would certainly take things off. To me, housing legislation is like a lot of things. I know the Vice Mayor is passionate about clean energy, and I like to see that. I'm on the library JPA. I'm, following a lot that's going on with the county library. Paul's on the whatever, and you're on whatever, and these are all important some of them are legislation oriented, but they're important to get in the middle of and have the city do it. The idea to say that it's more important than other stuff, and I don't see that at all. I think it's just one of many things that we all need to get involved in, and council members individually. Like I said, the vice mayor can decide that SVCE is important to her, and it sounds like the mayor likes the group she's in doing housing legislation, and I like being on Savaka, and Paul likes being on the trash, and all those are good. I don't see that it's, the world is, we can keep having council meetings to talk about it. We're very limited, because the other thing is not just money. It's, as I've said hundreds and hundreds of times, we only have so many council meetings during the year. And a lot of them are going to be budget oriented this coming fiscal year. And now we want to slip in more legislative discussions. Again, I'm happy letting the committee take care of that. I'm happy, just a second, Vice Mayor. I'm happy letting the Vice Mayor take care of SVCE. We don't have to have constant discussions on that. I'm happy taking care of Savaka, and we could go on and on. General plan and housing, I see no reason. We've had that discussion. They don't need to be integrated. So I think we need a status on it. We need to get it done. I think that is important. Open space, I'd like to see us have just this discussion, which we never have, which is what you're getting at. Is it realistic to think we're going to be buying property in various areas big enough to make a real park? Are we talking about just a little? I'd like to understand that better, but is that a priority the coming year? Not to me. Thank you.
Okay, so hang on. Paul had his hand up and then Liz.
Okay, I need to clarify what Councilmember Waterman just said.
Okay, so Paul.
Oh, okay. No, I agree. I think I'm going to agree with what was just said. What worries me is getting too detailed. So, for example, a category is that obviously the city should be doing ongoing maintenance that specifically puts people at risk, for example, dangerous situations. So I don't think we need to detail that portion of the roof gets fixed or whatever, but if staff deems that is a risk to people, they need to take care of that on an ongoing basis. It's what they do. It could be that it doesn't need to be fixed now, it will cost more later, and that is the decision to make too. In priorities that we talked about before, they may just have to say, we're not getting to it yet. But I think some of those things are things they do all the time. It was kind of like in the Survey Monkey talking about implementing online payroll systems or something. And we've done the past online permitting. The issue should be.
Hang on, Paul, it kicked me out completely.
We can see you.
I know, but it kicked me out. I couldn't hear or see anybody. It's rebooted.
You there? You back now?
Yeah, now I'm back. You got kicked out at the part of when you were talking about building maintenance, right at the end of that.
What I was saying was certain things are more task level, what they repair. They should be tasked on an everyday basis of fixing things that are dangerous or need.
Right, I heard that part after that.
And also the same thing, like in the survey, we had something about payroll, automating payroll, which I would like to see. We automated some permits in the past. There ought to be a bigger issue maybe for us is the automation of processes. But I hate to see us get into I don't see payroll in here. I don't see this on there. I leave that to staff. My last comment is, I'd like to see the legislation monitored through the legislation subcommittee. I always wonder how much impact we have by writing a letter anyway. We should be kept aware of that. But I don't think some of the long-term fears of legislation that may or may not come due should be something that sucks up a lot of staff time, given what I think are the priorities. We have a legislative subcommittee, which is great and can bring forth what's important, but I think they would be more apt to weed that out and not involve staff unless something's more imminent.
Okay, and then I had
Thank you.
comments, but Liz, did you have?
Yeah, I do. So I tried to clarify this, and apparently I didn't. Andrea, the city clerk, can you pull up the slide of the map? So I totally, completely agree that following legislation in and of itself is important overall. A subcommittee can clearly do that. So I think that last year when the housing stuff was different, but what I was trying to talk about now is it's the impact of the legislation that is going to impact the city's future, specifically the general plan. So I'm totally agreeing that just tracking legislation can easily be managed at a subcommittee level. It's not a priority in the level of things that we are now talking about. But Andrea, are you there? Can you pull that up, that slide up? I just wanted to show you, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, and I'm sorry if it seems hard to grasp, but I will offer that, yes, it's important to me because it's important for the council to understand the impact on the city. There is a process going on at ABAG to prepare this document for 2050, become the basis of the RENA numbers and allocations. And it has a map that identifies areas in the city that their planners think should be where all housing should go and where we will ultimately get a good. Okay, so she showed it here. Yeah, so all the areas in purple, and I know you can't see the Campbell boundary too well, but all the areas in purple and green are areas where the MTC, ABAG think we should be developing. And there's assumptions like a light rail system along 85.
Okay,
85.
can I step back real quick, Liz?
Okay, I'm just, if I may close by saying, I'm trying to provide some illustration of the point why I think it's important for the city.
Okay, thank you. I guess I want to make sure we're kind of getting off past our main topics, and I understand how important the 2050 and the housing and all that is, but we're trying to figure out is what do we want to have as our priorities, and then.
I am, sorry, Susan, Mayor, I am answering that. The question was on the list that you read. It says housing legislation, and Councilmember Resnikoff and Waterman both thought it meant the legislation, tracking the legislation. And I'm trying to explain that it's not tracking legislation anymore. It's understanding the impact of the legislation on our community.
Right, and that goes to a subset of the priority of housing legislation, past and future, and the impact of that. Andrea, can you go back to where I can see everybody? Yeah, there we go. One thing I want to clarify. Oh, Anne, you had comments?
I just wanted to say that my comments were actually in response to what I heard earlier, in that staff was looking for direction from the council as they develop their work plan items. And the items that I refer to as the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance and the legislation is really within their work plan. It's to let them know that this is a priority and that we should be looking at ongoing maintenance as a priority, but not necessarily as a priority this year. It's and overall, priority as they develop their work plans. The same with the legislation. I feel that the legislative subcommittee should have a purpose. We should be reviewing pertinent legislation that affects our community as far as local control and budget control, and that it could play a more active role, but within the scope of the work plan items, not to be a major work overall priority. So I wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so I want to do a little summary again. I heard 3 categories of somewhat of priorities. The first one I'll describe as our subcommittee assignments. Rich and Paul mentioned Savaca, and I forget what the sanitary name little letters are, but we each individually have our subcommittees that we're on. And that then only if it's relates to our main priorities, like the housing legislation, the subcommittee then relates to the bigger picture to bring forward what the issues are. So for instance, Councilmember Resnikoff at our last meeting emphasized the impact of SB 1383 and the recycling. So at that point is when it comes to the council. And then that goes through how the legislative subcommittee. So we all have our subcommittees. Then we have the category of the work plans, the priorities, like what Councilmember Bybee just mentioned about a priority within the work plan could be emphasizing the building maintenance. So when you come back with these 5, 10, and 15% cuts, from what I'm hearing is don't show that one as a high level of cut. Show that either as is or say only 5%. The third category is this bigger, larger overriding priorities like we had last year. And so the point I was trying to make with this is that we haven't taken anything off this list. We've defined it a little more. And then we've added this fiscal responsibility and helping with how the economy is going to recover. Does that make sense to people that there is the bigger priority, the subsets to the bigger priority? Rich?
Yeah, so that makes it easier. I mean, so the bigger priority would take community participation, those 2 subcategories off, and we put that to the middle category you mentioned, because that's not a,
Well, again, when I meant community participation before, it was way beyond legislation. So if community participation is still a topic, it should be more inclusive of just legislation. And I haven't heard from anybody that making sure that the notices go in the mail or that we go in the newspaper as a high priority. Yes, it's important. So that one could come off, and then the legislation and that goes to the legislative subcommittee, which then they bring it forward when they.
Yeah, and to the vice mayor's point, you could then integrate that into what we're calling, if you want to reword the term general plan.
Yeah.
Develop, you could come up with the words vice mayor, but I think all of that is in the next, I like always the idea from councils of the 5-year plan. We happen to have a general plan, but where are we going? And that is going to be reflected in the housing element and the general plan, in these new legislations. All that integrates into what I don't know what the word is that you guys been on the planning commissions know, what Paul can tell us. But overarching, where is the city going with development, I guess is what I would call it. But,
well, and that could be called something like the long-term land plan, long-term planning. Paul and Liz could see if they have a better name for it, but it goes to the long-term planning of the city zoning layout, how housing is going to impact us, how the ABAG is going to impact us. So yes,
I like that.
Yeah.
You like that? Okay.
If I may, I don't disagree at all, primarily because of the confusion. That whole category of housing legislation and legislation overall can be taken off the priority because it confuses us. I do think that under the land use, we do need to look at a comprehensive understanding of housing and things that are going to change the community. And I think if I may just say, the general plan began 5 years ago. A lot of the assumptions and existing conditions were based on 5 years ago. So there's a lot of that that is, may need to be reconsidered. So I'm fine,
Okay,
and that one.
how about if we call, I got a new one. Comprehensive long-term land use planning.
Fine.
I got some thumbs up from Rich and Liz. Paul and Ann, does that sound better than just referring to the general plan? We got a iffy on Paul. How about Ann?
I'll give you a thumbs up.
You got you had some sideways and up, okay?
I
How
was
about
just-
Ann?
I was making you wait for the vote.
Okay, so Ann, you like that term, comprehensive long-term land use planning. That incorporates the general plan, the housing legislation, the 2050, everything that affects long-term land use. We got a thumbs up, Ann?
But you're changing the title of the priority?
Well, no, I'm just rewording instead of just having in the strategic objective of land use and financial health, the council adopted priority said general plan update. So I was trying to find a category that incorporated the general plan, the housing legislation, the 2050 plan, the PDAs as a category.
Yeah, I guess if you're changing the priority, then that then matches the strategic objective, which is part of the general plan. Is that my understanding?
I'm trying to reword the title. I don't want to take general plan update out as a priority. I was trying to combine it with the other things that we talked about.
Okay.
Okay, and then, okay, so the housing legislation and others are not going to be listed in the big category called council adopted policies. And so we're going to keep under land use, what we just talked about, this comprehensive planning, Measure O. And then to me, financial health could add in here where we talked about the city's fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
And economic development, economic recovery.
Economic recovery.
Economic recovery. Okay, Brian, are you taking notes here? He's on mute. Brian's on mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm trying to take notes, but why don't we get this all out and we'll circle back and make sure what I've taken reflects what you're.
Okay, I'm taking some notes too.
Okay.
Okay, so that covers the first 4 under priorities. The 5th priority was open space. And so under open space, to me, it goes to, are we going to build any new parks? Are we going to change this in lieu fee? And how are we going to address open space? Is that the description of the priority for open space? I'm not seeing, Rich, you got to.
Just what I said before, I mean, I'm okay. I don't know if it's, out of everything we're going on, happening this year, it's the discussion we need to have, but if everybody's feels it is, and I think everybody else does, then I'd like it, but I would like a discussion, as I said before, on, sort of a come to whatever moment of what's real about it. Are we, we haven't really purchased any property since I've been watching, which is a while, when I was in Parks and Recs and all that. We haven't purchased, we got Zadanovich donated to us. So outside of that, are we really thinking about buying? Is that realistic? Forget about the downturn. So do we think in the next 10, 20 years, long term, we're actually going to go out there and spend some real money on a real park, not just, like Gomes Park's a real park. I didn't mean to knock it, but I meant, is there a real idea here that we're going to get a park, or is it more like we've talked about before that, one of these big office buildings or something, or retail that's there now goes out of business, and we put in housing, and that housing is going to have a big park that everybody can use. So I would like, it would be good to have the discussion. Doesn't necessarily mean at the end of that discussion, it's a priority.
Okay, so for me under open space, for instance, when we talked about it last time, there are some housing developments that build parks, but they're more seen as private parks.
Right.
And our biggest thing right now is that a person does not have to build a park. They can pay this in lieu of fee. And so if open space were a priority, to me, it would be then get rid of this in lieu fee or reevaluate how a development, what they have to build. Because I don't think we have land anywhere to buy a big park. Open space can be a trail. Open space can be a pocket park. Paul?
No, I agree. I've never thought that we're gonna be in a position to buy a lot of land, right? We just,
Yeah.
and sadly, if we could, it would eat up the Parks Reserve and we wouldn't have the money to do something on the land. So,
Right.
For me, the immediate ways of doing this are two examples we have. It was repurposing the community center picnic area into a playground. Made a nice in a wasted space before, and people seem to love it. The other piece to me is this trail, because we don't have to acquire land. We can have something out there where people walk. And the fact that people go around the track, around and around and around again, they will walk a mile down, a mile back, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. So to me, that's the way we improve it. We improve on the facilities we have, and we do a trail or two where we acquire land with the water district or something where we don't have to pay for it. I think realistically, to expect that we're going to spend millions of dollars on property, it'll never happen. The Stojanovich family, what they did for us these days with the value of land, they'd even be hard pressed to say, we'll take half of it, half the value. I mean, in fairness to them, that property is now soared, right? So I don't think we're ever going to see that again. So to me, new trails, like we're looking at one, and figuring out how to expand like new playground areas and things like that, that's what I'd like to do.
And what about this, the fact that you can pay money into it and not build a little park?
So I guess two things I'll say about that. One is if we can get more space for the public, that's a good thing. Let's start with that. The second piece is if that money is going into enabling us to put the $1 million to JDM and to upgrade Campbell Park and to put in the community center playground that we did and maybe build a trail, are we going to lose those because the money is going to something else? So that's all that money we've accumulated over the years. I guess I would ask it another time for a public works director to come in and maybe explain to us, if we did what you're saying, what would be the impact on the fee? And if he tells me, well, we wouldn't have had $1 million from Morgan, then it's a bad thing.
Right.
So I'm not against it. I just don't know if it's going to suck up all the funds we have of doing other things with.
Well, that would be, if it is a priority, that could be a subset of the priority.
Yeah. Certainly, there's an analysis in there of if we took the money away and did what you're saying and let them spend it at the development, what would it cost us in other projects we do now because we rely on that money? It may not impact them, but I don't know. So I would hedge on that one because I don't know. I don't want to lose the ability to do playgrounds and trails if we don't have that money.
Okay, and I think I saw you raising your hand.
I just feel like that's a discussion that should be had at a different time. It's either we're going to make open space a priority as a council priority and move forward.
Okay, Liz.
I would just offer that also. I'm pretty sure, and we don't have to have this conversation now, there are different definitions of open space. The open space fee has been, and I believe Councilmember Resnicoff hit it, it was to anybody who moves in needs open space and common parks. That was in fact meant to provide that money and support for the community as a whole. There is also open space requirements for projects, and that's in addition. And in some projects, we did in fact negotiate your open space is internal to your project. So there's two ways of looking at it, and that can be a more detailed discussion later.
Okay, so are we saying that that's not in this highest level of priorities? We haven't ranked these priorities.
I'm fine to leave it there. I just want to offer that it, as Councilmember Bybee just said, there's a lot more to it.
Right.
We don't want to predetermine what we mean by it.
Right.
I would agree if I could. I don't think we should define what that is necessarily. Right. We're saying this is kind of like the thing before of of automate things or maintain. We don't have to say exactly what those tasks are. And I think I'd like to hear more info from Public Works on what those options are and what the different uses of money are. But I'd like to keep it a priority.
Okay, so now we have 7 priorities. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 5. We're back to 5. We just changed it from comprehensive long-term land use planning, which combined the first 3 under the council adopted priorities, and we added the 2 of the fiscal sustainability, I think we used the word, and the economic recovery. Does anybody else have any, is that what people want as the priorities? Brian, you have what you need?
Yeah, can I just summarize what I think I'm hearing, just so we're all on the same page? That we're keeping legislation, we've revised how we're going to be that a little bit.
We're not keeping that.
No, that becomes a subset of the comprehensive long-term land use planning.
I got you. Okay.
That goes away. Both of those go away.
They're a subcategory. It goes through the subcommittee.
Everything has subcategories, yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
under comprehensive long-term land use planning. And then I have, did we kept Measure O in there?
Yes.
And we've kept or added fiscal stability and financial recovery. I put those as 1. Do you have those as one priority? Or?
I think they can go combined together. They relate to each other.
And then I have open space.
Oh, one thing we didn't have, it was JDM. Do we want to put that as a subcategory under open space?
Yes.
Yes.
I think some of these have a life of their own. I think somebody else said that earlier. They're just part of regular business. JDM is, if I'm following you, that work is being done for the inclusionary park. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is just like Measure O is moving forward, but we're making that a priority. Anne mentioned JDM, it's ongoing. So to me, JDM is not a main priority category. It falls under the open space priority. Does that make sense? Anne, does that? I didn't hear what did you say yes?
Yeah, I mean, to me, if we're looking at priorities, JDM is a major work plan for the Public Works Department. And so to me, that should be a priority, a council priority to make sure that that gets done.
Separate from being under open space.
It could fall under the open space category. It could be a subset.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it is still considered a priority. Rich, did you have a comment?
Well, I mean, again, this is, I guess I'm all right. I mean, what Anne's saying is fine. I mean, we always sort of get, again, in the same trap every year, which is, to say kind of these work plan items, which may have been result of the council saying in prior years, it's a priority like Measure O and like JDM, or it's a priority, which we never put on our list, as I said before, things like street maintenance or the police department. Those are, as Ann calls it, the engine thing. So their engine is getting that done and getting it done on time. But the same thing, we could make the same discussion about the police. Part of their job, part of the engine is getting that going. So I know these things overlap, and that's where we kind of get trapped on it. So I'm okay leaving it in, but just making it clear, the council's already we've kind of done our job and said it's a priority. Now, you could argue that with Measure O, but it's now staff's job to get it done and get it done at the proper time and in the proper way. So,
okay.
Lots of discussion on that. Thank you.
So Brian, let's do a check-in. It's about 12:20. We're gonna have a lunch break, and people who want to participate in the county call at 1. Do you see that we're going to need to come back after that, after 1:30, to talk about what we have more? Or do you have everything now? I feel like we've kind of accomplished what our goals are for today.
Yeah. We were fairly efficient. I think just that input on those priorities and the comments that were made earlier is enough for us to move forward. So I've got enough unless council has additions to the discussion.
Well, I just want to make sure that, okay, so we got the main category, we got some of the subcategories, and then this third group was the work plan. And when staff comes back on June.
Oh, Susan, we lost you.
Frozen.
Susan, you're totally,
Am I gone? Am I still there?
now you're back. Now you're back, but we lost everything you said in the last.
I'm having tons of communication problem. Okay. So I guess, so the third category is as you come back with these work plans and you're proposing cuts, from what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like one we want to cut 15% has to do with the building maintenance, building upkeep, long-term planning. The day-to-day operations, that's the rest of it is for you guys to come back and show us these percentage cuts. Is that clear to Brian?
Yeah, we'll take that input and that will affect, the budget proposal that's coming to you June 9th. That's correct.
Okay, so let me go around in voting order real quick. Is there anything anybody else feels we need to talk about? Because otherwise at 12:30 we'll end and we don't come back then today. Rich?
I'm good.
Ann?
I'm good.
Paul?
Good.
Liz?
I would just offer on your summary that when back, they remember the term that council has asked in the past, which is essential services. When they present scenarios, it's essential services that we're needing to understand. And I am nervous, I'll just put it out there, I am nervous that having a meeting on June 9th leaves an awful lot to be agreed to in order to be approved by the July 1st deadline in our council meeting. So the more we can do sooner, the more staff can get to council members sooner, and the opportunity would be to ask the city manager to have individual meetings with council members on that material so that there are no surprises in the meeting. I think would be productive and helpful, certainly for me.
So the schedule right now, as of today, Friday, June 5th is 2 weeks out. Brian, is there anything that you could get to us before June 5th?
I don't know I can commit a specific date right now. That's what we can commit to, and we're working towards that. If we can beat that target, we'll certainly do that. And we'll be prepared to have set up individual council members to go through that very detailed in advance of the meeting so that we can be efficient and there's not surprises at the meeting.
Okay, so one last comment from me then is a subset, just like we've had these other ones, of this fiscal stability and economic recovery. Are we going to have a proactive plan of what happens if COVID comes up back and with the vengeance in the fall, and that falls under this? We're not going to pay the Chinese fire drill next fall. We're going to have pre-planned. We're going to know what we need. We're going to have indicators of when to activate EOC, that kind of stuff, right? That's all part of that category.
Yes, we're preparing that plan, correct.
Because that'll need some budget money and staff time for the budget for next year.
Yeah, we're trying to provide for that sort of advanced planning.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? No, we're all good. I don't have my little hammer.
Just anything staff wants to say?
Yeah, so anybody in staff for the good of the order here? You guys are good? I don't see anybody. I'm trying to zoom back and forth the pictures here. Ann?
I just want to thank staff for what they've brought forward. It's a very challenging situation and it's changed daily. And I do appreciate the efforts that are underway to try and accommodate council direction and while maintaining services and providing the services that our citizens are accustomed to. And I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and I'll ditto that. I think you guys did a great presentation. Will, very detailed information, very, lots of numbers to juggle around, but very well presented. I think it's great how hard staff has been working, and also too, all the people that have worked through this. I mean, we've got Diana in the office every day. We've got Andrea there. We've got Paul's over in Public Works. Todd's over in, Paul's in Community Development. Todd's in Public Works. The police are working. So I want to say, and especially thank you to everybody and to Brian. You've kept the engine running, maybe not full throttle, but the engine has moved forward, and I appreciate everything that everybody has been doing. And so now the next time we're together as a group is the council meeting on June 2nd. Okay, we're good to go. Oh, Rich?
Oh yeah, just real quick. Probably you don't know yet, but do we know if we can meet live or it's going to be Memorex?
We're planning for both scenarios.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I got to figure out whether to head back.
Yeah, we're planning a Zoom meeting at this point because I don't know that there'll be large group gatherings even if something changes. But we are planning for both contingencies with reduced seating capacity.
Okay, so I'll just put a plug in that because we don't know till the last minute of whether we're going to be able to do live or not. I was planning on going back down to my mom's. And so to me, it would be good, maybe just go ahead and plan another teleconference. I don't think the state law will have changed by then that we still would be able to do it.
Bill, do you want to?
Yeah, actually, we don't know that is the answer. The governor could pull the plug on the stay on the Brown Act at any time. So, I mean, you could still teleconference in from wherever you are as long as we have a quorum at City Hall, assuming that if the governor did pull the plug on the exemption on the Brown Act.
So we would need 3 physical people present in chambers. Yeah, and
Correct.
And
I wanted to mention or ask, I talked to the city manager in a one-on-one about this, about the ability for, if we are doing this meeting for the budget introduction, the possibility of allowing or having residents be able to call in with their comments rather than email. It's a bit of a challenge for people to be able to, at the spur of the moment, send in an email, and it may not get in time.
Right.
Other agencies have an ability for the public to call in, and I'd like to see that happen. This is an important meeting for the city as far as residents and budget concerns, and they should have an opportunity to call in if we can produce that. Thank you.
great, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I would agree with Ann on that last part. And just an observation regarding the Brown Act. There's no indication overall that sheltering in place is stopping anytime soon. It would be unlikely to relieve these conditions on the Brown Act, which would create you having to open up your site to the public. So I think as long as sheltering is in place, you really can't reverse the current Brown Act restrictions, right? Because it would mandate you letting strangers into your house when you're supposed to be distancing. So probably we're probably safe on that.
So as long as they're planning for both right now, we've got a week and a half to find out how we're going to proceed. Brian?
If I could comment in support of Councilmember Bybee's comments and Councilmember Resnikoff, we are prepared. It's just how we set up the Zoom meeting. If we do that budget meeting remotely, the public will have ability to participate. We'll unmute them and mute them, kind of like the experience you had today. But we'll be prepared to be able to do that for the budget.
And Brian, if I can, be aware, as you know, I saw on the news last night, another Zoom meeting that got Zoom bombed and they took over the presentation again. So that's always a concern.
Or they present information that's not appropriate and we don't have a lag.
Is what happened. The content, the language was very inappropriate.
Right. We should have a lag of 10 seconds or 5 seconds before they start so that we don't have them do something we don't want. Okay, this is it, guys. Now we can end the meeting. We're good. Thanks so much again. I appreciate everybody's time. Now you have your afternoon free. Bye.
All right.
Brian had
Thank you.
something.
Now.
Brian was saying something.
Thank you.
Oh, Brian, were you waving or saying goodbye? He was saying goodbye.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, have a good
Bye.
afternoon and weekend.
Well,